JoJo, as Top Nation is not aware of, but we're gonna do a little minor drop here. We are getting serious about merch, peeps. We've heard the requests. Shout out Columbus, Georgia, as always, for being our test case to show that we have supporters and people are very interested in our top brand. I'm telling you, people, Tina went straight to Alibaba. We're getting that overseas quality embroidered apparel.
I'm so
and
excited.
It's gonna be dope. Joanna's seen some mock-ups, but I need to just simply tell people that it's a much more, shout out to anyone who's like any type of apparel designer. I have questions coming at me like that I'm like, do you have a recommendation? They're like, which fabric type? Like this, like 10% polyester with like 40% cotton and da, 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 da. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, can you send me a picture? Like, what is it? There's a lot of that goes into material and fibers and sizing and stitching and
The whole shebang.
a lot. And the whole shebang. It's also stressful because like I'm talking to people like literally in Asia. So I feel like it's like 12:30 at night. I'm like trying to like talk through very like nuanced little things. But I just want to make the people know that
It's coming.
we have risen our stress levels. We have bickered with each other about it. We are putting in the hard work to bring you all what you want and what you need. Should we tell them what the two pieces are or just wait? Let's wait.
Okay, we'll wait. Oh wait, I get excited.
Let's just wait. We get really excited. But I will say, I feel like if you guys have a type of apparel that you're like gung-ho about, just message us.
Please.
Because this is just the beginning. Okay. 2 wash-ups, 1 pro is a North Carolina LLC. So we are very much licensed to bring you the most beautiful apparel that your heart desires.
Exactly.
Now that we've gotten our merch out there, I know we talk about Columbus soccer all the time, but we just it's the season. So we're in the bandwagon. Joe, tell them your news.
We are
tell them about the team.
2021 Peach Belt regular season champs. So proud of the girls. It 1 out of 3. That's what I keep saying. 1 out of 3. Got to get the PBC tourney. Got to get that natty. We'll get 3 out of 3. But in all seriousness, I'm so proud of the girls and how they battled, how they fought. We came back from 3-2 and we won 3-2 against North Georgia, and we came back and won in double overtime to kind of seal the deal, which was super exciting. So just on and upward here.
It actually brings up a good question. Brings up a good question I want to ask you.
Okay.
What is your win or loss? Because I actually don't think a win necessarily. I think people would assume that a win would determine what you would pick, but in your career, it doesn't even necessarily have to be just that,
Okay.
UNC or whatever. I'm trying to think of my own, but like everyone knows, going for a run or a championship, there's something that's like kind of nice in the air, especially when you're like competitive, yes. Right? Like, even if you don't win it, there's like something in the air. You're like, yep. It's fall. Like this is like what you love college. It's like fall. You're like loving your friends. You guys are like in it. You're grinding. The games are like tough because it's the end of the year.
Yep.
What was your favorite run at UNC? Actually, I'm going to make it college. At UNC, it doesn't necessarily, because I'll tell you mine. I'm almost sure it's not going to be one that we won the championship. Again, that's always nice.
Yeah.
But what run were you like, you know what? I would have, bar none, I would have wanted to be on no other team than this one, even though we lost.
Yeah.
Or won.
So my junior year, we were rolling. We were straight up rolling. Number 1 in the country, like having the time of our life playing soccer. And then that's when all of our ACLs hit. So we ended up losing in the second round. We had 6 starters out with ACLs. And that if I always think if that team was healthy, we could have done some serious damage in the tournament.
Need luck.
Say again.
You
You
need
need a
luck.
you need luck. You
Need
need
a little
luck.
luck. You need a luck. I don't care if you're the best team in the country. Everyone needs a little luck. Some more than others, but
exactly. That team was the run. That would have been the run. What about you?
honestly, it was definitely my sophomore year going into the national title, just because when you go that far, like a Final Four run, it's like a long, like when you really think about it, I mean, the NCAA tournament starts in like early November. You're like, there's something special when you're like, I'm staying home in Virginia or wherever you are for Thanksgiving. There's just something like amazing. That's always the goal. You're like, let's just get there and then we can worry about the rest. And I remember for us, it was even crazier because we had to go out to LA to play UCLA, which was like their most talented team. They had just come off like a national title. They had like Sam Mewis and like everybody you could think of was on that team. Taylor Smith, it's super stacked. They had like 8 seniors that were all in the league.
Cody Lavrovsky,
Didasco, like the whole team was stacked. So we definitely on paper were not. And to go there and beat them, it was like, I actually have one lasting memory, and it was after the game. Your adrenaline is so high, you're like amped. And Steve comes on the bus and he's like, all right, we're getting cookout. And you would have thought that they just told us that like we had been starving for months and like someone offered us a burger and we were like screaming and going. It's like moments like that where it's just so like, it's so exciting. And I think the greatest part about this year, like in the spring, we went to like the tournament. You stopped in with me too. It was like at Wake Med, but there's just something special, like doing it away in a hard environment or getting it at home. And I'm happy, like now that COVID settled a little bit, these girls can like get those games with the NCAA tournament in, and get the real tournament experience. So I'm excited. I'm a fan now. Right now, I'm a D2 fan where I'm going to be following you guys, but I'm still a little invested on the D1 side. I'm always at Wahoo, but I think it's going to be, we're getting into that Halloween.
Anson got his 900th.
Shout out.
Anson got his 900th win today.
Awesome.
Speaking of trying to make the tournament, ACC tournament, we had to beat Notre Dame today to stay alive. I'm telling you right now, Tina, you know this too. Making the ACC tournament is harder than going to the Final Four. I think that's a hot take, but that's hard.
Well, yeah, because you end up going to the Final Four and playing an ACC school.
Exactly. It's
yes, 110%. And then our year, do you remember our years where it was like all of a sudden they were like, we're gonna make it 4 teams.
Yeah.
I'm like 4? I'm like literally like, and then like years before that, like the 6th seed would like win it, and you're like, because it's like the top 8 all go to the tournament.
But
so it's like
the top, like that year, I think 10 teams were ranked in the top 25, but only the top 4 can go play in the ACC tournament. It was insane.
Literally. I mean, we literally went to the national titles in the spring, UNC, Florida State. I'm like, this is like every day of the week in the ACC. But anyway, it's always fun because then you get that Halloween, you get that everyone. Good luck to all those schools, baby. That Halloween, like end of season game is super fun. And I'm excited, Joe. I'm excited to be like a fan on the run. So we got a good one for you coming up. I'm rocking my Columbus State. Oh, that's good. Well, on that note, we're gonna get into our chat with another ACC stud, and we'll let you get into that and enjoy it.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
I
love my intro. So here we go. Mandy Laddish here on the pod, a current wash up, but a former NWSL player, a national champion at Notre Dame, a world champion with the U20s. Thank you so much for taking the time to hop on the pod with us. How you doing?
I'm good. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yes, it's very, very exciting.
Thank you.
So let's just kind of like just dive right in because let's just go for it. So I do a lot of research, obviously. It's one of my favorite things to do. but you grew up in the Midwest.
I did.
So that's an interesting kind of soccer place to grow up, first of all.
Yes.
Obviously you ended up at Notre Dame, but talk a little bit about just your youth experience, playing on youth national teams, regional teams, and then how you ended up at the good old Fighting Irish.
Yeah, well, it depends on how in depth you want me to get, because there's a lot that goes on. I mean, I'm sure all of us have these stories. So I started to get like really serious. I remember, I'm sure you guys both remember that moment where you're like, wait, this is getting serious. And for me, it was my dad made me leave all my friends on the Pink Panthers when I was in 6th grade and was like, you have to go play for this other team, the Dynamo, because all these girls on the older teams are going to D1 schools. And I was like, wait a second, is the whole point of me playing soccer so I can go to college? Is that what this is about? I thought we were having fun. So that's when things started to shift for me. And I eventually found my way after that club to Blue Valley. And I played on a Kansas club because there weren't a lot of good teams in Missouri in Kansas City. They were all in St. Louis, just 4 hours away. So my club team was amazing. We won state like 7 years in a row, but we didn't have a lot of competition. Now Kansas City soccer is boomed, like massive. Sporting Kansas City has a huge drawing, and there are tons of great players coming out of Kansas City. So my club team was really good, so good that 3 of the girls that I played with on my club team were on my pro team in Kansas City. So that was kind of fun. And then, you know, I think, so what happened actually is my freshman year of high school, I got this really bad injury. And up to that point, I was pretty good, but I wasn't that great. I wasn't making the regional teams. I was always an alternate. So I was like kind of on the cusp. And then I don't know if it was just because I learned what hard work is at that point, knowing like going right into high school soccer, like, oh, I want to be good, so I have to work extra hard. And then my work ethic changed and I suddenly started getting better and better. And my friends on my club team were like, you were okay. And then all of a sudden you were really good. And I started making the national team. And I made the national team actually before I made the regional team, which was weird. But both were great experiences. I played at the U17 World Cup in New Zealand, and then went on to play in the World Cup in Japan, which was amazing. And through that, met so many amazing people that I have, you know, kept close up to now. It's such a small world. You guys
It's tiny. It's so tiny.
It's so tiny. And in that time, I actually committed to Mizzou first, because the way I was brought into the national team, I kind of went from here to here really quick, and I wasn't ready, and I didn't really understand what my potential was or what my value was. So committed to Mizzou, realized I was really unhappy and really wanted to go to Notre Dame. I remember watching them in the Final Four, I think in 2004, and seeing Randy and being like, oh, I want to play for him. I don't know why, I just did, because every kid and they're watching the Final Four is like, that's a team I want to play for.
Yeah.
So eventually ended up visiting the campus and decommitted from Mizzou and went to Notre Dame. Ended up being a great decision, won a national championship, but also met my best friends there. None of them happened to be on the soccer team, but that's how you know it was the right school for you.
Yes.
It's like, it wasn't just soccer.
For sure.
It was a lot more. So
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, I always joke about Notre Dame that like every person I've ever met is like a diehard. I'm like, what do they put in the drinks when you guys like get there as freshmen? But it's like, I mean, in all aspects, they support the university. Holy water. Yeah. It's also a beautiful campus. Really, really beautiful. So obviously Notre Dame was a great fit for you. You come in as a freshman, you start all 85 games of your career. Pick up a national title on the way, small work there.
Things both team and then have.
Yeah, good old loss in the final. Get called into the U20 World Cup where you win it. How would you credit kind of your, you know, you talk a little bit about your youth journey, but talk a little bit about how you would credit your early success and ability to be consistent early on. I think that's a really hard thing to do, especially in the ACC, as all 3 of us know. It's every single game once you're in conference is very competitive. And to, you know, Notre Dame at that point, right? You guys were one of the top 3, you know, to 5 powerhouses. So it's like coming into that kind of program right away, the expectation's super high to perform. So how would you credit that? And why do you think it kind of went that way for you?
Yeah, well, I think in the beginning, when I was in youth soccer, I had a really great coach. His name's John Perry. He works with Sporting now. I think he does think he runs the youth academy technical, something like that. But he was great. And we also had a really great strength coach. So I kind of learned how to train from a really young age, and obviously learned what hard work meant through an injury, which really helped me. And then after that, it was kind of like when I went into the national team, when I went into the regional teams, I never really felt like the best. I kind of was like, oh, I'm so grateful to be here. I'm going to work really hard and learn as much as I can from the people around me. So I really think what enabled me to be successful was learning from the players around me. And that's kind of been the theme of how I've gotten opportunities. At Notre Dame, there was a player named Courtney Barr who was amazing, just happened to be injured when I got there. And so I started playing because we needed a midfielder. And I don't know if I would have started otherwise, but I definitely got to start because she was injured, and then ended up winning a spot because I was able to play and prove myself. And I remember being terrified my first game. I think it was against Michigan at home. And I was like, all right, I mean, the pregame nerves are out of control, and then you just get in there and it's total zen. But I think just being able to be fortunate enough to play with players that I can look up to has been a massive component of my success.
I feel like that brings up a really good point about, I was talking to actually someone about this the other day around, I think it's relevant to sport, but even outside of sport, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, sometimes, yeah, like there's a little bit of luck in terms of like an opportunity that's put in front of you,
Mm-hmm.
but it's ultimately up to you to really take advantage of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was talking to someone and we were just saying that, like, I think a lot of times what holds people back is like, oh, this opportunity comes, but you're almost convincing yourself you're not ready for that moment. And
Mm-hmm.
in that process, you're unable to perform because you're so
Mm-hmm.
focused on, oh my God, I'm too young, or I'm not experienced, or I'm not good enough, or whatever the thoughts are that you're having. And it sounds like at Notre Dame, you got a great opportunity and you really just like, you were gracious, but you also weren't gracious to the point where you didn't think you deserved to be there. You were there and you took advantage of it. And I feel like that's something to highlight because I can think of a lot of times in my career where opportunities came and I probably let them potentially pass by just because of negative self-talk. And I feel like that's so, so even in my life now, I'm like, even work opportunities or outside of work opportunities, you just got to kind of take it, kind of take it till you make it. Right. I mean,
right. Yeah.
You just never know what's going to come of it. So I think that's really, really, really cool. So DNA you must have winning in your DNA because, you've won a lot of things in your career. So obviously after Notre Dame, you get drafted to KCFC, which under Vlatko, which I'm sure was amazing, being close to home and kind of having that comfort coming into the league back then. And then you win 2 back-to-back NWSL championships, which is like slight work again. Awesome. Great.
Thank you.
Yes. So you were kind of a part of the infancy of the NWSL. So the first 2 years, just kind of like, even though we're still in that grind, the real grind, like when it first started and like we were kind of a league, but like barely in a sense.
Yeah.
Talk about kind of your experience early on and how you think we've grown. And then after that, I'd love to get your thoughts on where you think we should be going and how we can get there.
Oh man. All right. I have a lot of thoughts.
Let's get into it. Let's get into it, girl. I'm repositioning.
Yeah. First, I was really excited to go pro. When you get drafted, you're like, yes, I got drafted, but that doesn't mean you have a contract. So one, that was terrifying to me. I was like, what? And when I found that out, I was like, why did you even get drafted? Like,
what's the point of a draft?
Exactly. I was like, now you're like allowed to try out. Like, come on. Silly. So that
on
your right. So like be careful of that too. That's the only really thing. They control you.
Only here.
And if you don't make it,
only here.
We may not waive your rights and you have to stay here. It's totally
right, exactly. It's bizarre. So that's the one thing I would change about the NWSL is making sure the players have more rights. But I know there's a lot happening with that. Sure. I won't get into that yet. So going back to Kansas City was great. It was weird because we actually trained where I played club, and it was exactly like club in the sense that we didn't have equipment manager. We had to wash our own clothes. You changed your cleats on the side of the field. Sometimes you're changing in your car if you just came from somewhere. Like, it was a weird 180, but you're also getting paid for it. But I remember I got the call that I won a contract, and they're like, we're going to give you $5,000 a year. And I was like, yeah, $5,000, which is so messed up now. Because mind you, I went, to school with some very capable individuals who were getting their first job opportunities at like 80K, but I didn't care. I was like, oh, I'm playing. This is exciting. I won my spot, blah, blah, blah. So in that sense, it was weird. Obviously, when you're in it, you're just like so excited to be in it. And the players were amazing. I got there thinking I kind of knew a lot of the players in the league, but I just wasn't prepared for the experience of the players in my team. I played with Lauren Cheney, Amy Rodriguez, Jen Buskowski, Amy LaPelbit, Leanne Robinson, like all these people who were on the team. I got there, Erica Timrack, Merritt Mathias. I was like, and I was just so out of my element because they were so good and so just consistent. And I just, was not prepared fully to get into the league. But I was excited to be in Kansas City because both sets of my grandparents are alive. My whole family's there. So like everybody gets to come see me play, which was fun. But coming from Notre Dame to Kansas City, the facilities just were totally different, right? And that's when you kind of get your first taste of like, wow, we have a long ways to go. And so that first year, I think we played at a college that I was at, and then finally we transitioned to playing at Swope Park in 2015. But yeah, it was weird, and I think it's really good to see where the league is coming now, and that standards have been put in place so players don't have to do that. But I do know in Kansas City recently, they didn't have locker rooms still. They had, they were doing all their treatment stuff out of a trailer.
Kansas City is like, Kansas City, you guys needed credit. Like y'all won, but like in the pits of it. Like out of all the teams, I feel like you had the least actually for most of the early years.
Yeah. I just remember
what I heard from
remember Alexis Schaffer telling me she freaking pulled up.
Oh yeah.
Had like she slept on her, like brought an air mattress. Brought her own mattress.
Yeah.
Like, put it on top of her rental car that she personally rented. Yeah. And there was like 3 to a room. And then she finally was like, I'm not doing this because we all love Alexis Schaffer and she's just not doing it. Yeah. Pretty crazy. To think I was when I was looking back, like you played with those, like, it's just crazy to think that wasn't that long ago, but yet it really was such a long time ago to see where the league has been and where it's going. Mm-hmm. So kind of, I'm really interested on this side of things because I'm an injury person who just has lots of injuries. So you go from winning 2 back-to-back championships, and then you get sidelined with hip injuries. I think I got my dates right. Is it literally from 2016 to 2019 that you were just like completely had hip stuff?
Well, technically it's 2016 till right now.
So now,
so,
right now.
Yeah, like I'm still dealing with it. So
okay. Yeah. So just talk a little bit about the difficulties in accepting those injuries, trying to get back to full health, and then kind of what ultimately led you to make the really difficult decision to just step away.
Yeah. So I know that you guys have had injuries as well. And I think injuries are interesting because depending on the injury, you're not prepared or you are prepared for what's happening. So I got injured in 2016 I think it was June 11th. I should know this because I have to put it on all my workers' comp stuff.
Yep.
So I think that was the game against Sky Blue. And it was just a weird tackle where I was in like a splits position and Rocky Rodriguez came up behind me and just like manned me because she's so strong. And my hip subluxed out of the joint like this. I felt it pop, but it wasn't so painful that I couldn't stop. I didn't have to stop playing. I kept playing. And at the end of the game, I was like, oh, my hip feels funny. My trainer's like, oh, we'll deal with it. And then I was able to keep playing, even though I was in a lot of pain. And so they were like, this is another thing that was wrong with Kansas City. They were like, well, we only have 5 MRIs to use. And we think that since you can play, you don't need an MRI. And I was like, okay, so
oh my God,
that was bad. So basically I played on it for the rest of season. And at the end of season, I was in a ton of pain. Like I couldn't really pass the ball anymore. I could pass, but I couldn't cross it. You know, my passes weren't accurate. I just didn't have the control. So they were like, okay, let's send you to a specialist. And I was like, well, let's get an MRI. And they're like, let's just send you to a specialist first. Eventually I see a specialist. They're like, oh, we think you have impingement. It'll be a 3-month recovery, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, like that's fine. I'll just recover in the off season, get surgery. But so my partner at the time, it's my partner still, Becca Moros, her parents are both doctors. And I grew up in a family that was very much like, this is a doctor, you trust their opinion, whatever they say goes. And Becca's parents were like, no, you need to find the best specialist that does the surgery in the country. So I'm so thankful for them that they taught me to question people, because at the end of the day, they're human. They can't feel what I'm feeling. So I ended up finding Dr. Bird, who invented the hip impingement surgery, going into surgery thinking it's just impingement. They're going to clean up my bone and, you know, maybe there's a little labral tear they're fixed. But it turns out that I had basically broken through my labrum entirely and like ripped it. And the whole time, because my labrum wasn't keeping my joint together, my femoral head was like in there like a blender, blending up my cartilage. So they had to do a microfracture. Have you guys ever had one of those? Are you familiar with them?
I haven't had one of those.
I haven't, but I've heard.
Yeah, I've heard them on knees. I've seen them on Lex Newfield had them on her knees.
Yeah, so they're so hips. This is the other thing, there's not as much research done on hips. So microfracture is kind of like a new exciting thing that people do to try and get cartilage to grow back, because cartilage doesn't grow back. You have to have basically fake cartilage. And what microfracture is they drill these tiny little holes in your bone that creates bleeding. And then that's supposed to create a cartilage-like substance. So going into surgery, I thought, okay, 3 months. Coming out of surgery, I was on crutches for 2 months, and then it was 6 to 8 months recovery. And at that point, the doctor told me, you know, if you were my daughter, I wouldn't play anymore. And that was like in one ear, not the other. I was like, wow. I'm going to play again, you guys. Come on, get out of here. So I was like adamant that I would fight through it, you know, and then turning up now, that was, you know, probably good advice, but at the time I wasn't ready to hear that. And so I kept going. And then, so in 2018, I couldn't get back. I just had too much pain in the front of my hip, especially trying to kick a ball. I just couldn't do it. We didn't know why. Nobody knew what was going on. And at that point, Dr. Bird was like, I'm not going back into your hip because it has so much damage. There's nothing I can do. And I was like, I'm going to find a new doctor because, you know, we're psycho. We're like, I'm just going to push my body as hard as I can until I can't play anymore. And, you know, looking back, I'm like, do I wish I would have listened to him? And part of me is like, yes, I do. But also I think I would have regretted it if I did and didn't try to play. I'm the kind of person that's like, I'm going to keep playing until I physically can't play anymore, which is basically what happened. So, you know, the second surgery, I found a doctor in Vail, Dr. Mark Philippon, very famous hip guy who's worked on the likes of Pele and I think, you know, Tom Brady, people like that. So I was confident, and he was too, that he could get me back to playing. So second surgery, he does get me back to playing. And that's when I came back in 2019 and started playing. And I got on for about 9 games, I think. And my hip was feeling great. I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And then I got a concussion. And when you're concussed, you can't lift anymore. And as soon as I lost my strength, my hip just couldn't get back. And at that point, my doctor was like, you have to retire. You're going to need to get your hip replaced before you're 35. You have to retire right now. Otherwise, you're going to, you know, be having issues the rest of your life. Yeah. So we did the third surgery, and that's when I decided to retire. And of course, I'm really summarizing all of it, but leading up to that point, you know, I had so much hope, and just, there were so many complications, and injury recovery is never linear. It's always this like crazy roller coaster back and forth, and it's a lot. And so eventually I think it just wore me down, and I was like, I physically can't play anymore because I just couldn't run. I was in so much pain. we did this, the third surgery. And even after I retired, I was still in so much pain. I couldn't work because I couldn't sit for periods of time. And eventually, I think it was 9 months after my surgery, after my retirement, I went back and they were like, this surgery didn't take. And it was the same surgery, the microfracture, the labral repair, all of that. And they were like, you have to get a hip replacement. And so I got my hip replacement in June of this year. And so now I have a new hip. But
okay. Yeah. First off, how does that feel?
Great.
Great.
Yeah.
My mom got one. Best thing she ever did. She loved it.
I feel like I'm on that. I feel like I'm on that path. I relate so heavily to that story. For me, I'm pretty sure I was playing on a torn hip labrum, didn't realize it because it masks itself in lots of different ways. Mm-hmm. And going into the 2020 season, I thought I was just fine. And I went to cut and my back, I fell on the ground. Like my back blew pretty much. Found out I had degenerative discs, and it was that kind of conversation where it was like, do you want to have a life after soccer? And if you do, you need to retire, because if it slips the next time, these degenerative discs, they ain't going back in. And I'm like, right. And so I guess my question is, how do you process, when did you finally, because I think you mentioned it, for me, it took me about 3 months or 2 months to fully digest that, like, I should probably listen to everybody that's telling me the right answers, but I don't want to hear I don't want to accept that an injury is making me retire, because every injury you get a surgery and you come back from. And these are very, it's not just a surgery and come back from. I'm still dealing with surgeries after playing. So how did you accept that, and what kind of gave you that aha moment that you're like, you know what, it's time?
Yeah. Well, I think for me, it was a massive point of contention in my life from 2016 to 2019. That's 3 years, that I was just going back and forth. Like, is this going to work? Is it worth it? And at that point, that's when you start questioning your identity, right? Because when you are sitting on the sideline, not able to play, it's so difficult mentally to watch your teammates play and just know you can't do it. It's even harder when you get a little closer, like you're right there, but you just can't do it. If you physically can't move, it seems a little easier. At least it was for me. I don't know why. So I think in those moments, I had started figuring out how to untangle my self-worth and start working on myself and like figuring out who I was outside of soccer, because slowly but surely, like the, what's the word I'm looking for? The reality. The reality of the situation, the fear that I wasn't going to play again started to creep in. And like, when the doctor first said to me, if you were my daughter, I wouldn't let you play, I wasn't ready to face that or hear that. And then slowly I started thinking, wait, what if I never play again? What if I never play again? And then it's like, wait, I really might not ever play again. And then by 2019, it's just had been so much. And I'm sure you guys have both experienced this. Coming back from an injury can be very lonely because you're training on your own. You're
so
not
isolating.
With your team. So isolating. Nobody really can feel what you're going through. Doctors, family, people are there for you, but they're not really with you.
Feel it on a visceral level.
Yeah, right. And they don't feel how it's affecting your relationship with the game. And so as with an injury, when you're not prepared to retire, it's like you're hit by a bus of like, you're forced to go through your identity change. You don't get to choose when you retire. You don't get to, have the, the excitement that comes with starting a new life. It's like you're forced into it. It almost feels, for me, it felt a little bit like a death. Like I'm grieving my career and grieving.
It's like a bad breakup.
Yeah.
That's what I always say. It's like a bad breakup.
Yeah. Yep. Like I was thinking about this today, actually, is someone told me, oh, you'll never be the same when I first got injured. And they meant playing wise. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll be just as good. But now looking back, I'm like, well, they were right, because I'm actually not the same person I was then. I don't have the same relationship with soccer. So I think going through all that, by the time I remember I was I shot a ball in 2019 and like my knee gave out because like you said, with hips, it affects so much of your body.
Everything.
And I was like,
Yeah.
I just can't do this anymore. And so that's when I went to the doctor, and I knew that's what he was going to say, because I had arthritis and my joint space was getting smaller and smaller. And so I think in that moment, I knew it was coming, and I was just so tired. I was ready to give in. But as athletes, we don't want to give in. Right?
Yeah.
Like we'll do everything we can to not lose. And that's how it felt, you know? So I think that's when I accepted it. And then I kind of threw myself into finding my next career, which I was lucky to do 2 months before COVID hit. And then COVID hit and things got real weird. So I don't think I really started processing my retirement until recently. And so now I'm going through what I feel like is the real grieving period I've had. And I'm sure you guys have experienced this too, is like soccer was my compass. Everything in my life, every social decision, my school, soccer led me to everything. All my friends I have because of soccer. Even my friends,
it's like even like when you get in the world and you're trying to make friends, you're like, wait, I've had built-in friends since I was 10 years old.
It's crazy.
I just want to know, and I think it's really important to highlight, is that the work you talked about, I just think it's so important in the fact that you took the time to realize that while still in it. And I try to I try to say this all the time to my friends who still play, is like, I'm not insinuating that your career is over or that you're not going to play. You could be playing 5 more years. But I really believe the journey to finding your identity outside of the sport needs to start right away once you leave college, because I didn't have an injury force my decision. But I think when you get to that point where you do have to make that decision, a lot of really bad things can come out of not knowing how to process that. Disorders, bad behavior with your body, bad thoughts, depression, whatever it may be for you. And it's a big reason why Joe knows I'm a huge advocate, why one area I think is really vital, needs to be improved upon in the league is mental health resources. Because to your point, when you go through an injury, I think it's also amazing to think like, we're not in positions where it's like you got injured in a game and they're getting you into surgery in 3 hours, the top person. Like that's like the dream, right? Like that's the NFL. You break a pinky, they have you fly across the country, the top pinky specialist, your hands fixed, whatever. You probably went through months and weeks of like vetting somebody and saying, what's the best alternative? I need to like kind of be my own advocate, which is so important to players. Like you are your own advocate. Don't trust every doctor. But in going through all that, like, I think what's so daunting to me is like, imagine, you know what you're going through an injury. It's so devastating to go through something and they say, you're going to be 3 months out. You get in to the surgery. It's a completely different show once they open you up. And then you're sitting on crutches for 2 months. I don't think people really rationalize like how significant that is, because it's like you went from being somebody who's working out 6, 7, 8 hours a day to now you're literally on a crutch all day long. Just it's like crazy. Trying to like, I mean, sometimes honestly, it's like me and Joe, we've talked to a lot of people about like how like that period of time when it's like twitch your leg an inch for like 1 whole month and you want to blow your brains out. Right. But like, you're talking about literally just sitting. They're like, just sit. Don't do anything. Don't like flex the knee. Don't move the hip. Don't maybe walk. Maybe don't walk, but like just sit. And that to me is so significant. And if anyone is listening that is a player, that is so important. You need to start finding out who you are outside of the sport, even if you're going to have 10 more years playing, because at some point that reality hits and it is like literally getting slapped in the face.
So when you were going through all that process, did you, I guess, was it the surgeries that made you look at yourself differently? Was it the rehab that made you kind of inwardly look? Was it the time by yourself? Was it the time away from the team? What was kind of the main factor of you actually being able to like internally like have a conversation with yourself about it, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I think Tina, to your point before I dive in, is like, I think that's so important, because at some point every single athlete is going to have to go through this. and it's not talked about enough, that you need something else in your life that gives you a sense of worth and value. Because I think as kids, we're taught this is like what will make you a great person, and you're going to do all these amazing things. And athletes are, powerful, confident, all these things. And then when you lose that and you're just rewarded your whole life for being this athlete, it changes
your
everything.
worth?
And it's your community too. And so no matter if you get injured and retire, or you just decide to retire, you decide not to play in college or whatever, you lose that. So I think that's important. And I agree. I'd say that to athletes all the time, is find something outside of it to untangle your self-worth. And I think for us, Joe, like being in the pros, like you have to have a sense, like a certain craziness about you, I say, where you're like so hyper-focused on soccer.
I call it the psycho gene.
Yeah, yes. You have to have the psycho gene, and it works. And so you keep doing it and you keep sacrificing everything. And so for me, I always was like, oh, I have other things I like. That's why I went to go to Notre Dame. So because I knew it when I was growing up, there was no league. So I was like, I'm going to have to go work at some point. So, I was like, oh, I've done enough. And then when I stopped playing, I just was hit with major depression. Like I was so depressed, and I was so tired of feeling depressed. I was like, what is it that's causing me to feel this way? And I think it was that feeling of feeling so low and helpless and so uncertain about the future that I finally was like, okay, obviously all of these feelings of joy and, like confidence are coming from soccer. So that's not sustainable, because if I can't play anymore, then I'm never going to get that. So I have to figure out a different way to do it. And, I say this, but do I feel like I did that good of a job? Maybe not, I'm still kind of figuring it out, but at least I kind of started. I think it's still really hard some days. But I think that realization was important for me to kind of just get through the months of sitting down, and not being able to move or do anything. And my neurologist that I have after my concussion, he actually told me that the reason a lot of athletes go through depressive episodes when they retire is because when your body is used to working at such a high level, physiologically you change so quickly that it causes migraines, it causes, vision and depression. It's like,
shock me.
Yeah, it's not anything you can control. It's your physiological nature. So it's chemical. It's like, and that's another thing, is like, why are we not having mental health professionals ready and available as soon as people retire? Because unless you can maintain and like wean yourself off of training the way that we trained as professional athletes, your body's going to go through some crazy changes, and that's tough.
That is tough. I mean,
Think about Carly Lloyd this week. Think about Carly Lloyd this week. That's a crazy reality.
Yeah.
It's a crazy reality, but like in your situation and kind of in mine, like I have not run since the last time that I played I have not run since I injured myself the very first time. Yeah. And it's been almost 3 years.
Wow.
Like I just can't get my body back. Like I have another hip surgery on the way. I just keep tearing labrums left and right, I guess. Who knows? But so kind of getting into what you're doing now. Kind of that happiness outside of soccer and trying to find what you're passionate outside of soccer. So during your career, you're an Adidas gal. Stalked you on LinkedIn because that's what old professionals do now. We go through LinkedIn. Nice. And you are an assistant sports manager at marketing at Adidas. If I said that right, please correct me. As titled.
You're cool. It was close enough. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
But I just got a promotion, so I'm now.
Yay!
Yay! We love that.
That's awesome. So, okay, first off, how did you kind of get into that role, and what exactly is that role?
Yeah, so I think this is another case of luck. I think there's so much luck that goes into everything we do. So in the off season, Becca played for Portland in 2014. We met in 2015, and then she would go back to Portland in the off seasons to train and go to this physical therapy clinic that we really like. Turns out that physical therapist ended up being my best friend. I lived with him for 4 years. So we would go stay with him in the off season and train with the guys at Adidas. Everybody that works in Adidas soccer is either a retired pro or retired like D1 high level athlete. So we would go play pickup with these guys and they are good. And so that's where we got most of our training. So for 4 years, I kind of just spent time getting to know these people playing pickup. And then obviously Zola is big time at Adidas, and Becky has been on my team was on my team the whole time I was playing. So got to know Zola really well. So once I retired, I was like, how am I going to get a job? And someone told me, well, you have a massive network, and you don't think about it, but you really do. Is like people all over the country that you've met, and they're like, just start probing your network. And so I reached out to my friends at Adidas, and it just so happened there was a sports marketing position open that they were like, you should apply for this. And so I did, and I ended up getting it, which was great. And sports marketing is basically like account management. So we manage the MLS contract. So I work with 6 MLS clubs, and I also work with our male Adidas athletes. And so having been a female Adidas athlete, I kind of knew what was done. I had ideas of how to, continue to progress. So it's been a really, really fun experience. And having known the people that I was going to be working with before kind of helped my transition. It didn't feel so scary going to corporate America, because that's a really hard jump. I was like, what's going to happen? Going from playing on a field and being in a locker room to working in an
Sitting
office.
at a desk.
Sitting at a desk.
What I did.
Yeah, I was terrified. But Adidas is great. You can wear sweatpants to work. Everybody's like a past athlete, so they get it. And then you get to play lunch. I can play lunch soccer, obviously, but that's what they call it, is lunch soccer. So it's been really fun. And I majored in marketing, hoping that I would like it. Turns out I do like it. So like another lucky thing for me is that I chose the right career. So it's been really fun. Unfortunately, I've only been in the office. I was only in the office for 2 months until COVID hit, and we're still working from home. So that part's been tough. I think for me, I felt like, I found my community. I found people quickly that I could be friends with. But now with COVID, which I know everyone in the world is dealing with, is like the feeling of isolation and not having the community. And so now I'm with Tucson. And so Rebecca got the head coaching job at University of Arizona, which we chatted about. I'm in Tucson, and I'm like, how do I make friends? I'm just used to having built-in friends.
I know.
So I'm like trying to do fun things. I'm taking a ceramics class. I start tomorrow.
Nice.
Who knows? Maybe I'll make some friends with some like Debs. I don't know who's taking those classes. So
I love that.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
We'll see how it goes, And so it's been a weird transition, especially coming out of the pros into COVID. And you saying you retired mid-COVID. That's weird.
It was weird. And it almost helped for me. It almost helped not seeing like going into, like, I was planning on going to preseason in 3 weeks, and like, so preseason didn't happen. So it's almost like I didn't have to process it all so quickly. Once the girls got back on the field, I had already processed at least some of what was going on. And it's interesting because you talk about luck and like landing a new job or whatever, but like I met my coach walking our dog, and we met, and like that's how I got to where I am. Like I didn't realize I wanted to do what I wanted to do, and now I love what I do. Yeah. So it's definitely a little bit of luck, but it's been it was weird. It's weird. There's a lot of emotions, lots to unpack.
I don't know about y'all, but COVID opened up a lot of like eye-opening. So most of my professional career was in Europe, which was incredibly isolating, which was more of the reason I stopped playing soccer. And I don't even know if Joe knows this, but I went to work, corporate insurance, was like, just like, this can't be my life for 20 years. And I went back to school to do my master's in marketing and journalism. And I had this little kick in me my final spring, once COVID was hitting, like, I'm going to go train. I'm just going to train again. Maybe I want to go play again. And then COVID hit. And I was just like, nope, I'm good. I'm also unemployed. What?
That's sad.
I'm good. And yeah, but I think it, when you're out of it, you appreciate more of what you were able to do. because you guys have the injury factor. I didn't have that. So for me, right, like I don't have a hip injury that's restricting me to be like, I just can't do this. I was at a point where I was like, okay, if I put a solid 6 months to a year and I really go for it, maybe like it's hard to get back when you kind of sit on your butt, not doing it for 3 years or what was it, a year and a half, 2 years. But like, I was like, you got to want it so bad. Like, I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be running till I die on a treadmill and lifting exorbitant amounts of weight. It just wasn't my passion anymore, which kind of led to my decision to not do it. But I think COVID really pushed not just people that were like in consideration, but people in the league. Like, that's a real reckoning point of like, do I want to do this? Right. Because we don't have all those extra factors of like luxury environments and all these money coming in, right? Like, you're doing because you love the game. And I will say I'm proud because I want to see the league progress. So I'm very thankful that the women were able to persevere through that and play a long season like we've been in, because that's a lot. They really haven't stopped in 2 years. And on my last question, I actually, we've talked a lot about transition, so I'm going to kind of maneuver it a little bit, Joe, but I'm just here. I want to just circle back a little bit as to where you see the league going and where you think player empowerment can be. Where is the avenue for that kind of growth? In fact, me and Joe were talking about Becca. I think what's amazing is like, it's really nice to see somebody get an opportunity at a big city who has that kind of playing experience. Because me and Joe talk about this all the time. We had Becky Burley on. It's like, there's not enough female coaches. There's not a lot of enough former players that are present, relate. I always tell Joe, I think her greatest quality as a coach is that she's been in it. She's been in all types of it. She went to UNC, she did it all. Where do you think our growth lies? Is it, I mean, I'm sure it's a lot of avenues, but is it, how do we, empower these women to help us get to the next level? How do we add? Where do you see that moving forward?
We, as in us, like us on the podcast right
so
now,
us and players, right?
Yeah.
Like how do we assist in that, and how do the players assist in that journey? Because I think we're still in it very deeply, but as a former player, I'd love to know how you personally feel any onus to kind of like help progress the game still, even though you're not playing.
Yeah, well, I think that one thing I just want to say that is interesting about women is that we really undervalue ourselves all the time. And I know you guys have probably heard this, that coaches are like, oh, when you coach boys and you are yelling about how someone did something terrible, the guys are like, oh, it was him, it wasn't me. But all the girls are like, oh, he's talking to me, it was me. And so I think that the league in the beginning kind of took advantage of that. And we didn't have a CBA. And I think the most important thing we can do is to have a CBA to hold the league accountable for the way that they treat us, right? Like, we just expected that people that were in business that knew what they were doing would treat us well, because in order to have a successful league, you have to have a good product. And who is the product? It's the players. So if you want to win, you have to take care of your players. Now, I say that having won in Kansas City, but I think the reason we won not having the resources was because we had a great coach and a great staff and great people. We always joke, like, we had the best national team players because they're all so thoughtful and kind and like worked so hard. And, hot take, not all national team players do that. Like, it's just how it is. So I think that we got lucky, but I think that the biggest thing we can do is hold ownership and league leadership accountable to give the players a good environment to play, or to pay the players more, and to listen to the players. I think that there are so many women in the league who have really good degrees and are really smart women that the league just thinks, or the ownership doesn't value their opinion in the way that they should. These women have been paying attention to women's soccer their whole lives. They know what draws people in, they know what doesn't, and I don't know why they're not listened to. And I think the first way to get listened to is to have a legal agreement that says you have to listen to us or we're not playing, right? Which sucks, but that's what the men have. That's how you get things done, unfortunately. So that. And then I think just continuing to promote women in the league, because I think the NWSL plays great soccer. It's really fun to watch. And I think more people would be interested in it if they knew about it. And if the environment when you went to play or when you went to watch a game was better. People aren't going to go back to a game at a D3 college when they could go, to a Timber Stadium. And that's the thing with Kansas City is they were just playing in a baseball field that's literally a stone's throw from Sporting Kansas City. Like, I'm not kidding. It's next door. There's just a street block like in between them. It's like, why wouldn't you just have them play at Children's Mercy Park? Even if it's a little more expensive, you'll get more people, more fans that are used to coming to the games, that already have a routine around it. It's just, I think it's things like that. And also, I think it's going to be important for the league to keep hiring the right people. I think LA, I'm excited to see how they come out. I think they're doing it right. So one of the contacts I worked with the MLS, she left to go work for them and she's great. And so I was like, great, now we have people that know what they're doing, that are good at their job, that will be able to promote the women the way that they should be promoted. So I think that, as former players, the more conversations we have with people, especially now in corporate America, I can have these conversations and say, this is what's happening. This is what I think should happen, has been really helpful and helpful for me too, to see the other side of it. So I think that, there's still a lot of work to be done and a lot of accountability in terms of ownership and, the way that players have been treated, which we know now, or at least the world knows, we've known forever that it's unacceptable. And 100%. I'm happy that, women are speaking out and aren't going to deal with it anymore, because it's just ridiculous. And women are powerful. And I also agree that more women need to be coaching. I'm really excited for you, Joe, that's a route you took. And you guys should definitely have Becca on the podcast, because she will tell you so many things.
We want Becca on the pod. Trust me.
So
Joe knows I pitched that today.
Yes.
Please let her know. We would love to get her thoughts.
Yeah. She has a lot more things to say on this, and much more eloquently. She's a great speaker. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we will 100% get her on 1,000%. Well, we kind of like to end things with a little bit of rapid fire. Oh. So you down?
Yeah. All
right. Your favorite coffee drink?
Just black coffee coffee with oat milk, but just regular drip coffee.
Okay. Nice. Describe yourself in 3 words.
Ooh. Competitive, sensitive, actually,
nice.
Creative.
Nice. Your favorite team to play against when you're playing?
Well, I actually really liked playing against the Reign back in the day when they were like the best team. That was my favorite team to play against.
That was always like a very cool game. I always felt like it was just whenever it was hosted in Seattle, it was cool. Okay. The television show you've recently binged?
Squid Games.
Okay. I haven't watched it yet, but I'm about to. I'm like, I've had too many people tell me it's
really good. I accidentally, I started it before it really got popular, because it popped up on my number 1 in America. I was like, I'll watch it. And I watched it with dubbed on accident, thinking that's how it's supposed to be, where it's like someone speaking over them in English, and it was so bad. But I was like, this is actually a really cool concept, so I'm gonna keep going. And then eventually I figured out that I could just change it to watching subtitles. So if you watch it in subtitles, not dubbed.
Okay.
This is absurd. Yeah.
I'll make sure to write that down. Okay. Your favorite teammate that you've ever played with?
Oh, I can't say that.
One of your favorite.
Moros.
Yeah, I was about to say, there you go. Good one there. Good. Very nice.
Good one.
Very nice. Well, Mandy, thank you for dropping all types of knowledge on this pod. You were incredible. I relate to you so much. So this one was a special pod for me. Thank you so much for joining us.
Mandy Laddish, what a true warrior you are, my friend. Thank you so much for hopping on the pod with us. Learned so much about your hips, learned about your transition out of the game. It's tough. It's tough for all of us. I think a lot of us who are not in the game, I think we can learn a lot from how you transitioned out and kind of set yourself up with Adidas I love chatting with you. Me and Tina, you know, it was a joy to chat with you. So thank you so much for hopping on with us. This next week, me and Tina are going to dive in a little solo pod. It's championship kind of in the air right now. We got NWSL championships coming up, the playoffs. We've got ACC, SEC, all the conference championships coming up as well, along with NCAAs. So we're going to dive into a little bit about what makes a championship team a championship team. We got the X's and O's, we got tactics, but we also got that culture element that we're going to dive into. So we can't wait to chat about it. And yeah, we'll see you next week.